That's a little bit better. Hey, Nicholas. Sweet. All right. So, as you've already seen, or you may have seen, Volkswagen Battery Day was a rehash a lot of what we saw at Tesla's Battery Day. So, I'm just going to do a quick run through of what they covered. I'm only going to cover the first half of the presentation because the second half is mostly charging, and I haven't had a chance to watch through all that, but it's about a half hour on charging. To open things up, I'll just make a few comments for those who are in a rush. Uh, First, when they talk about up to a 50% decrease in cost, they're talking about moving to a lithium iron phosphate battery, so they're not comparing apples to apples. When Tesla was talking about a 56% cost decrease, they're talking about taking their current chemistry and taking that chemistry and knocking the price down by 56%. Whereas Volkswagen is saying, all right, we're going to change the chemistry and yeah, it's not an apples to apples comparison. Simply by switching from a high nickel chemistry to a lithium iron phosphate chemistry, that'll save you, I don't know, I'm just pulling a number out of the air, but it'll probably save you 20 to 30% just by going to LFP. Well, that's half of the 50% right there. So it's kind of, I wouldn't call it cheating, but you have to understand the numbers when they're putting them out. So, yeah, key point number one, the starting point matters. So, not only are they uh, that 50% number, they're looking at moving to a different chemistry to achieve that 50% number, but also their existing cell costs are also already higher than Tesla's. So you can't make any comparison between Volkswagen's 50% number and Tesla's 56% number. Those are two reasons why, and the third reason why is Volkswagen's timeline is much deeper into the future. They're talking about hitting these. Well, actually, they didn't even give a specific date for hitting these targets. They just said what the presentation was about was looking to 2030, but they didn't give a specific year or a time frame on when they expect to hit that 50% cost decrease. Whereas Tesla's was much more immediate. And we'll see that as we start working through the summary here. Now, I only have about 17 minutes, so this is going to be fast. I have a work meeting that I have to go to. I'm just checking the comments here real quick. Cool. We're going to go ahead and continue. So, the first thing that they brought up is a unified cell design. A unified cell design, all that means is they're going to use the same form factor in all their different vehicles, and they're going to swap out what's inside that form factor they're going to change the chemistry depending on what type of vehicle it is. That's essentially what Tesla said as well, except Tesla, they didn't give it a management speak name, some sort of internal code name. They're just saying, all right, we're going to take our 4680 and we're going to put different cell chemistries into it. That's all the unified chemistry is. It's a prismatic cell, and they're going to put different chemistries into it. So it works across their entire lineup. Now, they say it starts in 2023. And then later on in the presentation, they actually give some later dates. So it sounds like they're going to have these cells available for 2023, but they're not actually going to be going into vehicles until around 2024. Now, one thing to note as I'm walking through this is I know the Battery Day presentation inside and out, frontwards and back. I've only watched this presentation once, so there may be things that I've missed. So, in terms of the 50% cost decrease, they said they would do that with a lithium iron phosphate chemistry, and they referred to that as inexpensive. Ryan Alvarez, thank you. Run the numbers. Uh, and the next chemistry they talked about was a high manganese chemistry. Once again, this is just like probably very similar to the high manganese chemistry that Tesla mentioned at Battery Day. And they said that would save 30% cost by switching to that chemistry. I covered this in a previous video, and simply by switching to a high manganese chemistry, I think it saved something like 10%, 10 to 15% cost is what I calculated. So once again, they're talking about what's their baseline? Are they talking about moving from a high nickel manganese cobalt chemistry to just a high manganese nickel chemistry and saving 30%? Because 15% of the cost savings will be from just the chemistry change alone. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I know I'm repeating myself here, but I'm just kind of trying to drive the points home. And they also referred to another chemistry that's actually could potentially cost more because it said plus XX. Maybe they just didn't word their slide very well, but that would be an NMC chemistry. So they're not looking at. It doesn't look like they're looking at much of a cost decrease, if any, by moving by sticking with NMC and using whatever new process that they have. They confirmed silicon would be the thing that increases charging speed, which I made an entire video on, and I said that it's pretty much something Tesla didn't cover in their Battery Day presentation and that they sandbagged. I think Tesla will continually increase their fast charge speed, and Volkswagen is doing the same thing, and they said they're doing it through silicon. I assume Tesla is doing it through silicon as well. Third thing they covered, fast charge, 10 to 80% with solid state. This is, once again, I covered this in my, I think it's just called the fast charge video. And I predicted pretty much exactly a fast charge of 10 to 80% in about 12 minutes if you have a supercharger that can support that. Now, one thing I note in their presentation is they didn't give a pack size for that 10 to 80% charge rate. The bigger the pack, the bigger the supercharger that you're going to need to be able to support that. So the limit here is the supercharger. As long as you put a decent amount of silicone in your battery, your charge speed will increase, but at some point you have to increase the supercharger speed to accommodate that. Moving on to the next one, moving upstream and making more in-house. So another part of the presentation, they're just saying they're moving upstream and they're moving more things in-house, but they're not moving as far upstream as Tesla, as far as I could tell from their little diagram. They're just moving into actually making the battery cells themselves in-house from 2025. But it doesn't look like they're getting deep into the raw materials. Dry coating process. I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of people asking about this. Now, I have said in the past that other companies are working on dry battery electrode. Volkswagen didn't give a date for when they're going to be doing that dry coating process. It's also notable that they didn't show any camera footage of that dry process. They only showed footage of wet slurry processes. So I don't think they're anywhere near having a dry battery electrode. And that's about the only thing I can say because they left it completely up to conjecture. They didn't give any time frames. But it is certainly within the realm of possibility that they can do DBE. There's an institute in Germany called Fraunhofer, and they've made a lot of progress with DBE. And there's also a company out of Germany, I think, called Sauersig. I'm probably mutilating the pronunciation, but they can make this dry battery electrode equipment. And I think that's the company that's actually supplying Tesla with the dry battery electrode equipment. Having the equipment is one thing, and making it work on a production line is another thing. And that's what, people have been working on dry battery electrode. We've had the machines for it for a decade. It's making it work that's the difficult part. Okay. Cell to structure. They said they're going to do cell to structure, but it's not going to be till 2024. They said that vehicle in 2024 that they're going to unveil is going to be the first to use a unified battery cell, basically their battery cell that's going in all their vehicles, with cell to pack. So it's probably going into Tesla's doing cell to structure this year. I'm continually making references back to Battery Day and what Tesla's doing because currently that's our baseline, and most people who follow my channel are into Tesla. And I focus on Tesla because to me it seems like they're on the cutting edge. One of the most interesting and the thing that I enjoyed most about their presentation is their focus on a hydrometallurgical process for recycling batteries. A hydrometallurgical process is a lot more, I'm just looking at the time, is a lot more environmentally friendly than a pyrometallurgical process where you use heat to break down the battery cells. So it doesn't it doesn't surprise me that Volkswagen seems to have more of a focus on recycling and lowering CO2 emissions, given the major markets that they play in Europe. That's where they're based. There's a big focus on CO2 and recyclability. So really happy to see that they're doing a hydrometallurgical process. Tesla, I'm sure they're playing around with hydrometallurgical processes, and there's people who used to work at Tesla who started companies working with hydrometallurgical recycling processes. They said 60% of their vehicles will be battery electric vehicles by 2030, which means 240 gigawatt hours. They're going to start production in 2023 in Skellefteå in Sweden. I probably mutilated that. It's spelled Skellefteå, but they're pronouncing it Skellefteå, I think. Yeah, so Northvolt is going to be the company producing those batteries for them, and they're going to get batteries from Northvolt for about 2 years before they start producing in-house. There's going to be 40 gigawatt hours in Skellefteå, and they're going to have 40 gigawatt hours at each one of their locations, but we'll get more into that. If you haven't looked into Northvolt, look into Northvolt. It was a company started by some former Tesla employees. And they're already building their factory. It's not just some sort of pipe dream. This thing is being built, and it will be producing batteries within the next few years. Okay, and then they started talking about their Tesla semis, or not their Tesla semi, Scania semi, that they need a 4.5 hour range with a complete charge in 45 minutes. Lots of fluff around that. There's not a whole lot of substance besides that. Their focus is on total cost of ownership, and that's an important thing for the entire Volkswagen presentation. There's a big focus on cost and volume. They're focused on the right thing. They aren't talking about energy density. They focused on what Tesla focused on, which is what's important: volume and cost. All right. 2025, they open their Salzgitter plant. They're going to have a battery production facility of about 40 gigawatt hours, along with a battery center of excellence. And from their video, as far as I could tell, they're using a wet process. I don't know if they're just using stock footage, but I would think if they're doing their in-house production, it's an opportunity for them to roll out their dry battery electrode process, but I didn't see any evidence of that. So I'm still curious about their dry battery electrode. Prismatic cell. Looks like they're serious about this. That's kind of stating the obvious, but they have a battery lab. They have their own testing facilities. They have everything that they need, and they're building their in-house battery production. So I'm really happy to see all these things. It's about time. Then they said they're going to have a center of excellence in the United States eventually, and a center of excellence eventually in excellence eventually in China and the United States, but the first one is going to be in Europe. Then they talked about their other plants that they're going to build in Europe, in Western Europe in 2026, and Eastern Europe in 2027. It's going to be a total of 6 locations by 2030 for a total of 240 gigawatt hours. So 6 times 40 gigawatt hours. So yeah, so they're targeting 240 gigawatt hours. Tesla is targeting 3 terawatt hours in 2030. Yeah, so that's about the size of it. I front-loaded this. It all comes down to what your starting point is. I'm just looking through the comments here. Storm Before the Calm is an excellent book. As one of the best short histories, it includes one of the best short histories I've seen in the United States and its people. Toyota solid state, we actually like, they've been working on it one of the longest, but they're also one of the most secretive. Supposedly, uh, they're one of the furthest along. I would expect Toyota's solid state before I expect Volkswagen solid state, but once again, who cares about solid state? It's all about cost. Even in Volkswagen's presentation, oh, that's one thing we completely missed off from Volkswagen's presentation. They talked about QuantumScape and they didn't give any time frames. To me, it seemed like, I wouldn't say they're playing it down, but they didn't give any time frames. We know from QuantumScape's material that it's not going to be till the late 2020s, but if we just look at what they're announcing today, solid state isn't their focus. That's not what they're going to be leaning on for the next 5 to 8 years at least. Yeah, we don't know anything about the power density. Uh, the thing is, with both Tesla's presentation and this presentation, there's not exact information given. There's a lot left to the imagination. I felt like Tesla's presentation was more precise and gave more actual information, and they were making comparisons that were more fair. Whereas the Volkswagen's presentation is a little bit weaselly to me to say that you're going to reduce cost by 50% by switching the cathode material. Um, or you're going to reduce cost by 50%, and as a subnote, uh, most of that's going to be, or a lot of that's going to be from changing the cathode material. Yeah, so nothing, we're not going to actually be seeing anything from them till 2024. When will Tesla mass produce the 4680? Well, it depends on your definition of mass production. They're already mass producing 4680 from my perspective. It's just a matter of getting the yield rate up. Now, I'm curious about what they're currently doing with those cells. They could just be stockpiling them, or they could be going into things. We don't know. Like, my timeline for the 4680 is still second half of this year to where they start going in vehicles. I'm sure Tesla has multiple secret battery projects. As we saw at Battery Day, it wasn't just one project. It was about a dozen projects that we saw at Battery Day. I'm sure they have a lot more up their sleeve. Tesla's horizon for Battery Day was about 2 years. Just keep that in mind. The horizon was 2 years, 3 years at most. And I'm thinking if we sandbag it, like at the very edges, Tesla was talking as late as 2025. Volkswagen's presentation was for 2024 onwards. Volkswagen's cost per kilowatt hour? Well, that depends on whether you're talking about currently or in the future. There's a report that came out the other day, but I didn't feel like I could trust any of the numbers in it. I'm guessing they're probably, I don't know, at the pack level between 130 and 150 kilowatt hours. 130 to 100, sorry, 130 to 150 dollars per kilowatt hour at the pack level. I'm a minute late for a work meeting. I gotta go. I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.